Okay, good day, everyone. Good evening to our friends here in US, and good morning to our friends in Cambodia, in Hong Kong, and everybody else who's slowly but surely joining. It's great to have you guys here. This is our third session from the 6-week series. Hopefully, you're all doing well, and I'm not killing everyone with the assignments. I know I've been messaging everyone about assignments. Been on your back. My wife says, "What do you expect? You expect everyone to do their assignment?" It's like, "Well, yes." And he put me on spot. She said, "Did you always do all of your assignments when you were school?" And I said, "No, but this is a little different." But anyway, I hope you're seeing the value of the assignments that we're giving you, because attending the live series is one thing, to see what you're doing, and then hearing. But then when you do implement, when you do the exercises, especially we've tried to make the assignments personal. It's not just something at random. Everything that you're doing should have a personal connection between yourself, your family, and hopefully this will all make a difference. And I think it is, from the comments that we see in the group chat, and also I do talk to most of the participants in the background. Really, it seems like there are some improvements our friends are making. I want to acknowledge a couple of friends that are unable to attend the live series, the live sessions. They are doing the program as self-study. There is Jerry from, I have to look at my list. Let's see, where's Jerry? Jerry's from Johannesburg, South Africa, who's doing the program on his own, and also King's from Malawi. It's amazing that not only we can have people on the live sessions, but then also friends that can do the program as a self-study. Anyway, let's start by doing a quick review, as always, of where we've started and where we are going. Sorry, I have to see my screen so I can hear it. And we'll do a quick restart. All right, here we go. There it is. All right, so a quick review of where we started and where we're going. So remember, we started with a bunch of questions to get you guys thinking about your purpose in life, what you're doing, how we should achieve it. We reviewed the spiritual aspects of finances. We went through all of that. We recognize that there are things that we want to do in this world, but then also there are things that are for those that have a spiritual belief, and regardless of what spiritual beliefs we follow, they all talk about the same thing, that we, if we believe that there's a God, we need to know him, to worship him, to develop our characteristics or our treasures that we are all born with, do those while we are on earth, and then also leave a legacy behind. So we started by looking at our character traits. We are all born rich with all of these, but then they do need work throughout our lives. And that's one of the purposes of us being on earth, is to develop our spirit so it is ready for the next world. But if there is such a big connection between our spiritual life and material life that we have to align them together. And up to now, it's been very much separate. I'm sure everyone agrees that spirituality is usually about attending service, whether it's at the temple, and mosque, in church, and then our financial life, we keep the business finances separate. We keep our family finances sometimes even separate. But we're trying to bring all of that together and make it into one unit. So developing these character traits are very important. Last week, we reviewed our goals, what our individual goals are, and if you're in a family situation, and if you're in a partnership, whether it's a business partnership or anything else, it's very important to not only record our goals, but also be able to track. And that's what we're going to be doing tonight. We're going to track our goals and see how are we making progress to our goals. And we also looked at this table. This is our whole pretty much existence. It's not even life, it's existence. From the time you're conceived in the mother's womb, we are taught how we should manage our finances. In mother's womb, we rely on the mother to provide for everything while we develop what we need for this world, this earthly world. And then the same example applies here. While we are here on earth, first we rely on our parents to provide our life necessities. Then we start working, active income. Our goal should be to start generating passive income, and that's something we're going to talk about a little more tonight. Because we know that at our later ages, whatever we want to call them, it could be called retirement. Some people like to call it next stage. We know that our physical body cannot continue to work to earn a living. So we have to make some sacrifices during our young years, working years, to make sure that we are prepared for a worry-free life during our later years. And then also continue our spiritual journey on this earth to develop, to know God and more, love Him, have faith in Him that He's created us, and He will continue to provide for us if we do our share. Do philanthropic deeds, sacrifice our time, I would say mostly for the benefit of others, become detached from this world, and also develop our characteristics. And finally, let's leave a legacy behind, something that we are remembered by, because according to the scriptures that we read, what happens afterward in our name, the good work that are done in our name, will continue to help our soul progress through the world of God. So that's what we did last week. We did a little bit on moderation. These are some of the exercises. We didn't spend too much time on the shopping list. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It's something that we love doing with the children, with students in school. Some of you have done it. It's an exercise that some people do, some people don't. But it really helps us knowing before we go to the market what we need to buy. And for example, in our society in US, if you haven't done that, for those who live in US and Canada, this is an app. I'm just going to open it that has update this. This is an app that gives us advertisement from different stores in our area. So I can put my zip code in there, and it will pretty much give me the weekly ads, because this is what we get. I believe this works in, again, US and Canada. I don't think it will work anywhere else. But before we even go shopping, we can see for the week what is on sale, the kind of compare a little bit of prices here and there. It's a very useful app, and even come up with a shopping list to make sure we are prepared. And particularly when we go to the supermarket, not to buy too much. I have a bad habit of doing that. All right. Coming back to our worksheet.
Sorry, did you mention the name of the app?
It's Flip.
Sorry.
FLIPP.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, sure. All right. Then we started talking about time management. And this is how we actually begin to teach our young ones in schools how to budget. And even sometimes adults have difficulties with budgeting, not only money and then also time. So this can be an ongoing thing that you can exercise as you need to. So this is where we stop. I'm going to stop here and see if there are any questions before we get into the budget. I'll stop sharing. If anybody has any question about so far what we've done, and particularly how we teach this information to young ones, to children. Any questions? Everybody's quiet. Okay. All right, so let's continue. And I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so one of their big assignments for this week was this dreaded sheet of creating a budget. I know some friends shared their experience with doing their budget, but maybe we can hear if anybody would like to share. What are your thoughts? Did this reveal anything to you that you hadn't recognized about how money is spent in your household? Any surprises? Any volunteers?
Our
Okay.
expenses are more than our income.
Oh, okay. All right, Baisa. So I know last week you were talking also about how you and Sharon, your husband, do things differently. Did it help with starting the conversation about your family finances?
Yes, definitely. I was feeling that this morning. We barely had time to talk with each other, but definitely we have that in our agenda to consult definitely and make some changes. Because yeah, it'll be a problem.
Well, it's not a problem. It's just something that, again, we have never been taught that this is essential. We go to school. We are taught actually a lot of things that we never use in our lives. We're taught physics, and unless if you become a physics teacher or go and into the physics field, we really never sit down and do any kind of physics equation to see why we're not floating in air, or why is it that a car goes so fast and stuff. These are all physics. And yet, this education, this training, these skills that are absolutely needed for everyone is not taught in school. So, and we're trying to change that little by little. I know we've been at it for 17 years now, and still there is not a lot of interest, but we are hoping that more and more parents and schools will become interested in providing this education. Anybody else? Any thoughts about trying to do the budget? Anybody else would like to share?
I like Anatin.
Go ahead, Sophia.
Yeah. I am wondering, is ABC's Wealth program has set the percentage to be saved, to be invested?
Can you repeat that question, please?
In our program, is there any defined percentage to be saved, to be shared, and to be invested?
Okay, so Sophia's question is that, is there any recommendation? So he's talking about down here, any recommendation on a certain percentage to be save, share, and invest? Really, it's not. It's really up to the individual, up to the family. And that actually brings me to the question that I want to ask. But yeah, there is not. Sometimes there's some left that we can do that. The most important is to make sure that you have a clear picture of what's happening. So I'm going to pose this question. If you see in the outgoing, so we call that outgoing, so our total outgoing, we put spend first, share, invest, and save. Do you think there is any logic behind this? Or does it make sense to do it this way? Actually, I'm going to go into the, what are your thoughts? I'm going to put it in the chat so you can either type it in or open your microphone.
Can you repeat your question, please?
Yes, so the question is, let me actually go to a different screen because you can see a little different. If I go to the register book, this is, remember, this is the one that we use for children in the classroom with the children. So the question is, and this is the exact same way that we've done it here. When we give allowance or pocket money to our students or our children, we ask them to put some in spend and then share and then invest and then save. Do you think that is the right order? Is there any significance, or should it be done, do it differently?
To me, I would prefer to start with invest, and then I spend and then I share.
Okay. Other thoughts? Anybody else have any thoughts? Whether this is a good order, should we do it differently, or is there any significance to this? All right, while we're waiting for responses, if you have ever flown in an airplane, one of the safety features that they describe, the flight attendants describe, is the oxygen mask that drops. They say that if we lose, if the plane loses pressure, the oxygen will drop, and they always recommend putting the oxygen mask on yourself and then helping your child or people that need help. Now, as a parent, we would think that, oh, first I should help my child. I should be selfless. I should put the mask on my child. But the reason they say that is because if we are not, as a parent, we are not taken care of by the oxygen mask, we will not even be able to help our child. It's the same way in here. Now, a lot of financial advisors actually say that you should pay yourself first, put something aside, put save. But then what we have seen over the years is that often people forget about their life necessities. And of course, what they define as life necessity is really sometimes not necessarily the necessity. For example, often people think of the latest iPhone as life necessity. They have to have the latest iPhone. They have to have the latest TV that comes out. A bigger car is life necessity. But we have defined life necessities as food, water, clothing, shelter, and health. All right, I'm going to stop and read the comments. Daniel says, saving is normally coming last because we save what is left after spending on essentials. Okay. Vicky says, to me, I think it's a right order because it can expose them to all these things at a young age, and which will make them get used to it. Okay. So yeah, there's really no right or wrong order, but this is the way we've decided to do it. And we've done our treasure box the same way. So what we think is that first we have to think about our life necessities. We have to have these. And then after that, we should think about, as we read in one of the scriptures, forget your own selves and bend your energy toward the education of your neighbors. It's like we need to help other people. That's why we put that one second. And then we think about investing, and our idea of investing and sharing it also is not just in the about the material, the monetary aspects of life. We think that we can share and invest our talents, our knowledge, our expertise, our time, our blood, a lot of stuff. And then finally, we should think about like, all right, I like to buy something nice for myself. It's a like, it's not the need. So that's why we have ordered it this way. When we do this exercise, when we give pocket money to our students in class, they have to put half of their allowance into their spend, because we actually use that to buy and the shopping list that we created in the moderation, we use that to go pretend we're doing supermarket shopping. That's what we do. But then the other 20, the other 10, they have total freedom on how to split between share, invest, and save. They will get that over time. And again, there is really no set percentage or amount, but we want to make sure that how we quantify or how we qualify our expenses as needs, and then we can allocate into the other. So I'll stop here to see if there's any questions. And we can see an example. Right. So if I go back to our budget sheet, so if you're looking here, again, we've tried to do the examples the same way. We have to have a place to live. We do need utilities. We need to eat. Cell phones, mobile phones are becoming a life necessity. Internet, clothing. And then as we go down, it becomes less and less important. These are things that we like to have, but we don't necessarily have to have. So this is the order of the example that we've done. And this way, the more detailed we can make our budget, it would help us to make changes. I know a couple of the participants, when I looked at their budget, a lot of things were like bundled together, especially like for us here that we use credit card for most of our purchases. it's very easy to just bundle everything. Gas, restaurant, supermarket, let's see, utilities, all of those can be paid out of with credit card, but then they need to be split up. That's what something, and it takes time to create this budget. Does that make sense? So not everything. Okay, so you're the only one who has camera on. So I'm just going based on what you're nodding at. All right. So Asa actually asked the app that is used for budgeting. I'm going to put it into the chat. It's called Mint.
I'm glad I got the right one. 'Cause
Okay. I mean, there are several different.
Yeah.
But there are several different ones, but Mint is one of the ones, and I'll explain what it is. Mint is an app that is designed by a trusted company, Intuit, that provides accounting software like QuickBooks and other things. And what Mint does, once you log into Mint, and I know Mint works for here in US, probably Canada, maybe even some European countries, but I'm not sure. What it does, once you log into Mint, you can link all of your personal bank accounts, credit cards, even from different spouses. All of that can be linked, and it will pull all the information in so you can get a better picture of what's happening to your finances, especially for those that so far have had separate bank accounts, and it's still okay. You can have your separate bank account, but that Mint allows to bring everything together, and it does the categorization automatically. So that's one of the good apps, but there's many other ones as well too. All right. Okay, so let me zoom up a little bit. Are we doing time? Okay. All right. So the budget sheet looks at our income and expenses. So those are two main categories. If I do this is something that you can do. This gives me a collapse view. If I don't want to see all the details, that tells me that, all right, I allocated $2,700 for income, and then I have allocated $1,095. So right now I do show a $1,600 surplus. Now let me just show you something. If I go into the matter, allocate something or do something crazy in here, just so you can see. If I allocate more than what my income is, you notice all of a sudden everything on top goes red. And that is what's supposed to do. So it gives you a little indication that you've allocated more than. So if your expenses are more than your income, it will immediately tell you. Now, the next step for the budget sheet is next week, once the month is over, we need to come in here and start to populate the actual numbers. And I know several of the participants had jumped a little bit ahead of time and were putting in their actual. There's nothing wrong with it, but usually we should wait until the month is over and then come in and put the actual numbers. Right. So here, I just do an example. Let's say if my job is not fixed, sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. So this month, my job, I made a little bit more money, so I have $3,000. Let's see. Oh, I'm gonna take this out. So hopefully, we're not spending $2,000 on travel every month. Rent should be about the same. Utilities maybe goes up and down a little bit. So we put all these numbers in, and then it does the same thing here. It does all the calculations. So you can see now how did we compare? I collapse this. How does our income and expenses for the month of May compare? And again, if you use Mint, it would be really easy because it will do all of it together and you can do the categories. If you're using other apps, you can still do the same thing, but you have to do it manually. I'll stop here to see if there are any questions on the budget. Oh, you good? Okay. So again, this is our income and expenses, incoming and outgoing. But our life is not just about the incoming and outgoing. There are two other elements of our financing. And I'm going to go into. All right, so this is how our finances tend to look in a general point of view. If you remember, we start with active income. At childhood, it could be extra chores, employment, self-employment. We could start a business of our own. But the goal is to get to a point where we have passive income, so we don't have to necessarily work. What is passive income? Royalty, we talked about it. If we publish a book, if we write a poem, if we write music, if we invent something that we license to other people. Having rental income, if we can purchase property, because everybody, the entire population needs to live somewhere. So that's something that we can do. Our family, this is our number one rental income for our family is the number one source of passive income. It does take a while to get there, but it's definitely something that we've been doing for quite some time right now. Then we get interest and dividend, which is really not that much, and then capital gain, which we will talk about it later. Now, what do you think we need in order to generate passive income? I'll put it in here, if anybody wants to speak to it. So we know that our active income requires us physically working. What do we need to accumulate to start having passive income? Any thoughts?
We need to probably start saving or have some savings or investment that can help us invest into what is going to be bringing the passive income.
Okay, can you give some examples, please?
Well, in the example you just mentioned, like buying a property to rent out, you will first need to research into like, potentially where it would be, how much you need to save in order to get a second property, and then
Okay.
credit plan for us. Yeah.
Okay, very good, thank you. So absolutely right. What we need to do, we need to start accumulating what's known as assets. Assets are usually tangible and sometimes even intangible. So in the chat, Faisal says money, knowledge, that those are great. Daniel says invest, same property, yes. So we do need, in order to have passive income, we do need to have assets. And these are some of the examples. Savings, bonds, stocks, real estate, precious metals, all of that stuff. And some of them provide continuous income. For example, if we own precious metals like gold, it goes up in value, and that's what's considered as capital gain. Real estate has both a passive income, which is if it's a rental property, it can provide regular income, but then it also, if it's purchased in the right time, the value will go up. So properties have double income. Intellectual property such as music and songs, I think they only provide royalty. I don't know if they actually go up in value or not. That is, I'm not sure. And savings and bonds and stocks, it's a mix of those, depending on what it is. Savings usually just provide some interest, bonds the same way, stocks, but has the potential to go up in value. Now, my question, do you think most people are concentrating on accumulating assets or something else in general? Go ahead, Asa.
Sorry, I was waiting to see somebody else. But in my experience, and the people that I've been like mostly like in contact with, they're not necessarily thinking about assets, but they're thinking about the monthly month.
Okay.
Making the means and what is it? Like,
Okay.
yeah, just thinking about the current expenses, not necessarily.
All right. So most people are just concerned about their current expenses. They're not necessarily thinking about assets. And again, sometimes, most often, the expenses that they accumulate is not even necessary. It's not necessity. Sometimes we do impulse buying. We just buy things that we don't necessarily need. And on top of that, there's also this thing right here, liabilities, especially in societies such as US, that credit and borrowing is so easy. Unfortunately, people concentrate more on accumulating liabilities than assets. So some of them are okay. There are good liabilities and there are bad liabilities. We'll talk about them later. So student loans here in the US, most people, when they go to college, they have to get student loans. If you buy an automobile, a vehicle, we have to, sometimes we do borrow. And mortgage, when we're buying a house, it's also the same thing. One of the worst liabilities that we can have, it's not the worst. For most people, I would say it's the worst, but there's even good way of having credit card debt if you know how to do it. So, and this is what's happening. Look at this here. Most people do active work to pay for their income and expenses. So we have to physically work. But then when we accumulate assets, those assets will start to pay for our life necessities and expenses. So that frees up our time to attend to whatever it is we want. Hopefully the ultimate goal should be to leave that legacy behind that you're supposed to be doing. Right? Any questions here before we go into breakout? Let me see if we do have. I know Donna from our group was here, but I think we fell off. Doesn't matter, we can still go on a breakout session. Any questions, guys, before we go into the breakout? And I'm gonna pull up. Do I have a volunteer to be not the lead, but just kind of coordinator for one of the breakouts? I'll tell you what the questions are. Any volunteers? All right, Parisa, you're going to go into one of the breakout rooms. So the questions are basically talking about passive income. If they have any kind of passive income, and also liabilities. Let's talk more about liabilities, especially in different countries. How's that? So let me create the create. And so I have this 5 and 6. Okay, now all right, we'll take 10 minutes and then we'll come back. So basically, we want to talk about the assets, liabilities, and passive income. If you have already started to generate some passive income or not, if you have some ideas. All right, let's go to our breakout room. Did the breakout pop up? All right. So the questions that we have is about assets, liabilities, and passive income. Anybody would like to share your thoughts? Carol?
Hi, Alex.
Go ahead.
So I have some thoughts about passive income. So at the moment, what I do for myself is mainly the insurance products. Because, for example, I do some savings, and then for after a certain years, for example, I have some products for savings for 10 years. And then after that, it accumulates and it has interest and something like that. And then after a certain age, maybe when I get retired at around 60 years old, and then I will get some money each month for my passive income. So I think this is something that I do usually.
Okay, all right. And does that give you confidence that once we get to 60 and above, you'll be okay, you'll be set for life, you don't have to physically work?
I will have to do my financial planning from time to time because I think sometimes life changes and our budget and expenses will be changing. And then I will do what I can do at the moment, but maybe after 2-3 years, I will recalculate what I need for the future and then try to do something more if I need more.
Okay, all right. And that's what really is very important. Sorry, if I'm looking away, is to make sure that those who are just joining attending one of the sessions. Yes, I'm good. Okay. All right. Any any thoughts from anybody else? As far as Maria, since you're just joining, we were talking about passive income, assets and liabilities. And just kind of sharing some thoughts about what do you think? Have you started to create some passive income? Have you started to accumulate assets? Carol just shared some other thoughts. Anybody else would like to share any thoughts? We have a quiet group here. Carol, how is it in Hong Kong? Is it typical for people to plan for the future or not?
I think for Hong Kong, it's a bit different from the other countries, like Western countries in the US, because our retirement benefits are not as good as you guys. So what we need is to really plan ahead of time. When we are young or like at our age, try to save money or create passive income as much as possible. That's why insurance products in Hong Kong or saving products in Hong Kong are quite important, I would say. And then, but recently, in the recent years, the government has been paying more attention on the retirement. So we have something like what we call MPF. So MPF is actually like a provident fund, mandatory provident fund. So every worker, they will need to have like 5% of their income as their provident fund each month. And then also for the employer. So every month they have to invest like 5% of the monthly income of that worker. Yep. So this type of money cannot be used until their retirement age. Let's say like 65 is official retirement age in Hong Kong. So I think this is what has been improving a bit. And then I think in Hong Kong it's not easy to plan for retirement because everything here is quite expensive, I would say. And then and then for myself, I think I started to look into my budget and expenses a couple more seriously a couple years ago, since a couple of years ago. Yeah, and then I think if at my younger age, if I have a course like what you do now, I think my life would be different. And then what I do would be different. Yeah. So I think this is really good at young age to teach the young adult, the youngsters to learn how to do budgeting and manage the finances.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. So Maria says, Maria is also from US here. She says, I'm investing, but it's more for retirement, which is perfect. One of my goals is to create a book, use that as a passive income. Another idea I have is to own a rental property. I'm eager to hear about other ideas. Okay, so Maria, those are perfect ideas. And just before you join, I was sharing with the group that rental properties is our family's main source of income right now. We were very lucky that 2011, we had a company, we had a startup company that we sold, and we invested in everything that we got into real estate, which was a perfect time. It was right after 2008. Prices were down. And since then, those rental properties are now carrying our family. And that's why we can do this program at no cost to everyone. That's what we've decided to do. Now that we are financially set, we can do this at no cost to everyone. And Carol, when you said that we are better here, it's not that rosy in US. Many people don't have any financial plan. Many people don't have any retirement plan. Government does have some systems in place that encourages, which we will talk about the details next week or the following. It's like there are retirement plans where people can put money in there, and if they can take it out before retirement, but they will be penalized. There will be like 10% penalty on it. They'll have to pay taxes on it. So there's a lot of incentives, but still, people still are more into, again, I don't understand why people have to go sleep in front of Apple store when the new iPhone is coming out. That to me is crazy. Or worse than that, when they go, I don't think they do that anymore, but they used to go sleep in front of the movie theaters and be the first one to watch a movie. Like, why? I don't understand. And yet still people continue to accumulate debt just by buying new things. I want to give a chance to our friends from Cambodia. Joe, where are you dialing from? If you can put it in the chat. I'm not sure where you're dialing from. Our friends in Cambodia, if you guys want to add anything before we leave the breakout room. Okay, well, everybody's quiet. Well, let me close the chat room, the breakout room. We'll just go back to the main session. It's about 10 minutes. Carol, how is it, since we have about a minute, do a lot of people use credit cards in Hong Kong?
Yes, a lot of people use credit cards in Hong Kong, and some of the people have like more than one credit cards. And then I think the credit card debts that you mentioned is also one of the issues that people come across at the moment in here. It is just so convenient, and then it's not. So we can link a lot of the applications, like the mobile phone app, with the credit cards. So it's like a part of our lives. We can't just escape from it. That's what I think.
All right. Okay. All right. No problem. All right. So let's go back to the main session. And
Okay.
Yeah. We'll continue. And we'll leave. All right. I think everybody's back. Everybody's back now. Yep. Everybody's back. Okay, Faisa, you want to share what you guys talked about?
Sure. So one of our members, Sophia, shared that one of his passive income is franchise. He has two type of program that he basically sell out to the schools, local schools, and the schools pay for him instead and pay 20% of what they make to him. So that's one type of passive income. Also, Molopi also shared that he also have a rental property. He rent out, and that's his passive income. Vicky shared that in her country, she, for example, she has a land that in her village, she rented out to the locals for the whole year for the agriculture, and she get paid. And we also talked about the house that we live in. It doesn't consider passive income, or it's not an asset, basically. It's a liability more than asset, I guess. But the asset would be more like if we buy another house or another property, that would be our asset, like the house we live in or the car that we use to, do our daily life. Those are more liability than asset.
Okay, all right, very good. So we'll look at what is considered assets and liabilities. So we will look at it a little bit more in depth. Carol, you want to talk about what, since you did most of the talking, go ahead and
Yeah.
talk about it.
So we did mention about the passive income here in Hong Kong. So what I do is usually doing some insurance saving products. After saving for a period of time, and then I can get accumulated an amount of money, and then I can get it like every month after the retirement age. And then this is one of the passive income. And then we also did talk about the for planning retirement in Hong Kong. It's because in Hong Kong there is a mandatory provident fund. And then all the workers and then their employers need to contribute for 5% of their income every month to accumulate for the retirement for that provident fund. And then they can't get the money until 65 years old when they get retired. So I think it's pretty good. So at least we have an amount of money for the retirement. And then we also mentioned about the credit cards. Credit card bills are one of the issues, I think, in Hong Kong. But it seems like we can't get away from it because we can tie the mobile phone applications with a lot of different credit cards that we have. And then credit card is just like a part of our lives. It's not easy to get away with it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep, that's what we talked about. So there's a lot that still we need to learn together as far as what is assets, liabilities. But the most important thing is for us to recognize that, especially if we have habits of just spending on things that are not necessary, those lose their value. Whether it's a clothing item, whether it's a second cell phone or a new cell phone that we just, because a cell phone, yes, it does have some value in there, but it really doesn't generate any kind of income. So let's look at the next assignment that we're going to be doing for next week. One of the assignments. I will share my screen. Share the correct screen. So now that we started on the annual budget, so you're working on it. Now the next assignment is for us to get a sense of what we have and what we don't have, or again, assets and liabilities. That's what this exercise is next sheet. So I'm in the assets and liabilities. The way this one works is that we put in everything that we own at the end of every month. So we can begin to see how our assets and liabilities, hopefully our assets are going up, and I need to add a graph in here, and our liabilities are a downward. So we can start, and we have itemized them into assets that generate income. So this is what they are. For example, treasury bills. I think this is also called treasury bills in other countries as well. These are, this is what we can buy from the government. And it's basically, instead of putting money in the savings account, we buy bills from the government and they just give a fixed interest. That's what I believe I've heard that other countries mention the same thing. It's an investment. We can look to see if there's any kind of monthly income. So we'll start with here. This is in this column, we will record the value of this treasury bill. So if I have purchased $8,000 worth of treasury bill, that's what I put in here. And please, you can overwrite all of these numbers. These numbers are all as an example in here. So you can overwrite. If you have a rental property that's producing income, so I'm just going to put, let's say this one gives me treasury bills usually don't give too much. So let's say if I get $3 in monthly income, if there's an interest rate for it. Let's say right now, Treasury bills in the US do give 5% interest rate, which is very good. Then if I have a rental property, hopefully this one is giving me a little bit more money on a monthly basis. So if it gives me $100 in month, and of course the value is going to be much higher. So let's say if this one is $75,000 that I have purchased. So this is, and if you need to add on more items in here, you can definitely do. Let me know. I can add more lines in there. So this is how we start with the income generating asset, our passive income. And the goal is to keep on increasing this over time. Then we have our non-income generating asset, such as bank accounts. I know, I think this is the bank account that we use for daily basis, paying bills, doing the different stuff. We call it checking accounts here in the US, but I know other parts of the world, they call it deposit accounts. If you have a savings account, I don't know where you can get savings at 10%. Here in the US, for the longest time, it was 0.01%, meaning that if you put $100 into the bank account for the whole year, you will have $100.01 at the end of the year. At least because of the increase in interest rate, it has gone up. Banks are still very low, but there are some banks I am getting like 5%. So for our friends here in the US, that actually that's 4.85. For our friends in the US, if you have any cash, definitely I can recommend some banks where you can put your money and it's safe, it's insured. So again, you can override all the numbers. So this would be the second part of our financial tracking. Not only we keep track of our monthly income and expenses in the budget sheet, but we're also going to keep track of our assets and liabilities. If you have a car, we can put the value. Cars lose their values. That's kind of definitely a liability, but it's a liability that we need. I mean, car is something that, especially here in the US, almost everyone needs to have a car. If you have jewelry, gold, and anything else, you can put all of that. You can list all of those. I'll stop here to see if there. Oh, and then real estate as well. So this could be our primary residence. So the house that we live in, it actually is considered an asset because it does have value. It's not a liability. Now, we might have a liability against it, we will see, but the primary residence, the house that we live in, is an asset. And I'm not sure what we can get with $22,000 in the US. Here, I'm going to put, let's say, 100,000.
I like to make the house where, example, the house where I'm living. If
Okay.
I have only, if the room available just only for my family member to live, then I call it as an asset. In case that the house is extremely bigger than what I need, I would consider it as a liability because I have to pay for the tax, I have to pay for maintenance and so on. So for me, the house that is living can be considered as the asset only when the space is for the need of the family.
Okay, that's one way of looking at it. Thank you, Sophia. All right. But as we were talking about, so our primary residence is definitely a non-income generating asset. It doesn't provide it unless if you have a bigger house that you need and you can maybe rent a part of it. If you have an extra room that you can rent to someone, or some of the houses here in the US, especially lately, they've been encouraging people that have a little bit bigger yard to put a unit, a separate unit outside in the yard, so that can be rented at a lesser price to people that cannot afford. So that's how.
Agree. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So there are a lot of different ways, but a real estate is definitely an asset, whether it's a primary residence, which is non-income generating, or the rental property that definitely is income generating. Any other comments about assets? Should we move on to liabilities? Okay, all right. So our liabilities can be a lot of different things. It can be loans, student loans, business loans. I'm going to put now the liability that comes with either our primary residence or the rental property is a mortgage. That's what we call it here in the US. Mortgage is the loan that we get to buy either a primary residence or the rental property. So this becomes a liability. So let's say if I purchase my primary house for 100,000, it's almost guaranteed that not nobody, but most people cannot save $100,000 to go buy a house. Usually they come up with about 10 to 20% of it. So let's say $10,000. We'll go based on that. And then they borrow $90,000 for that primary residence. So I'm going to put this mortgage. Okay. Let's see. I will put loans like student loans, student and bridge loans. So you can put the percentage interest rate in here, so you know. If you don't know what all of this is about becoming aware of what's happening in our financial world. What's the percentage rate? Right now, here in US, it's about 6% if anybody were to get a new loan. Student loan is about, I think it's about 5% interest rate on it. That's what it is. So, and then credit cards are actually going up. I think it has gone up between 26 to, so I'm gonna put 25, between 26 and 30% almost. Because that rate has gone up quite a bit. Now, which one of these liabilities do you think is good? Which one is not so good? Any thoughts? Are they all good? Are they all bad? You can either unmute or put your response in the chat. I hear a lot of thinking. I see a lot of thinking.
I think mortgage is for primary residence is good because it can turn to become our asset on somehow. But I don't know credit card because in Cambodia we don't experience on the credit cards.
Yeah.
But I listen a lot. I listen a lot through the YouTuber that about the credit card, but I have no experience on that.
Okay. Well, I can say that in some senses you're lucky that you don't have credit cards, but then in some senses you're missing a lot by not having credit cards. Credit cards is one of those double-edged swords that if we don't know how to use it, it could be deadly. And I'm literally talking about people have committed suicide. They have killed their, unfortunately, family members, murder, suicide, and then they kill themselves because of all the debts that they could not handle. But then credit cards, if we understand them, if we learn how to use them, it's like if you love driving fast cars in a controlled environment, like in a racetrack or something, that's how I look at credit cards. I cannot live without my credit card. If you see my desk, you will think that I'm crazy as how many credit cards I have, because I actually make money. It's not a source of income that I rely on it, but credit cards is something that can provide a lot of benefits here in the US. But it takes a lot of discipline. It's not something for everyone. But for most of us in the US, we should be, once we have the discipline, once we have our income and expenses under control, we know what we're doing, then utilizing credit cards can be very beneficial. There are a lot of great benefits to credit cards. All right, let me see some of the comments about the question of which ones are good, which ones are not. So Maria says, mortgage is good because the house is earning equity value. Exactly. So what Maria is talking about, equity, is the difference between the value of the real estate property minus the liability against it. And for most times, the value of a primary residence or a property does go up, unless if something happens to the economy or it's a bad time. So for example, from 2000 to 2007, the property values in US went up. Just kept on going up, and going up. So people who bought early on, they did really well. But then people who, let's say, bought in 2007, after the real estate market crashed, their property value dropped quite a bit. So they most likely lost some money. But usually there is some equity in the properties that we own. Parisa said credit card is bad, mortgage is good. Sayor says mortgage and biz loans is good because it will generate income. Exactly, mortgage is good. So you guys have the idea. And look at what this sheet does. So once we put all of our assets and then all of our liabilities on the top, this is another financial term, net worth. Net worth is everything that we own, all of our assets put together, minus the liabilities. This is how much our financial house is worth. Kind of look at it, if you were to sell everything that we have, not that we would ever do that, but if you were to sell everything, this is how much cash I can take out of all my assets after paying all the liabilities. So that's how this sheet works. So next week into the following week, once we are done, let me go back to the budgeting here. So if you haven't started on your budget, please do so. But great job to most of you guys who did the budget. We're going to, and starting from mid next week, once the month is over, once the month of May is over, we can begin to populate the actual numbers. So we know what our income, what our expenses were. And then after we do that, we should look at and list out once a month. You don't have to do it like once a month. This one says once a month, but even if you do it like once every quarter, once every 3 months, it would be good to see what's happening to our financial life, both as income and expense, and then also assets and liability. And again, hopefully this number here, the green number, this should grow, and then our liabilities should reduce down. Especially for there are people, often when we work with individuals here in the US, they have a lot of credit card debt. And that is something that's, and particularly by paying 25% interest, that is very high. So we help them understand that we need to reduce the credit card debt and then increase. I'll stop here. I'll see if there are any questions before we jump into the next topic.
I like for the budget in the expense part. I think it would be more easier for the one who is newly to experiencing in budgeting if we can make it like a category based. That is easier for the new experienced one.
Can you repeat that? How should I make it easier?
I think it would be easier for the new user for in a part of expense if you can divide it by category.
Oh.
It's more easy to look on it or
okay,
fulfill it.
Okay, so give me a category. Give me an example, please.
For example, like you know, like kids expense,
Okay.
Utility expense, and so on like that.
Okay. Well, this is something that you guys can change. I mean, these are some of the items that I put in here, but you can overwrite all of these. So if you have, and like you're saying, what Sophia is saying is that maybe break it down into more categories, and everybody has the total freedom to do that. These were just something that we thought is general. So you should be able to add, which I have seen some of you done. So let's say, for example, utilities. This could be like here for us in our town, our gas, natural gas and electric are bundled together. And then water is different. So you have total control on how many categories you want to add in there. Is that what you're asking for, Sophia?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you can change. I mean, these are some of the general categories that we put in, but you can add in, you can delete any of these. Yep, total control.
Okay.
Other thoughts? The most difficult part of this budget and assets and liabilities is getting into the habit of writing these numbers. Or if you use an app, is getting into the habit of looking at it. Now, remember, one person in the house needs to be in charge of doing this budget. The budget is not something that more than one person should do. So you have to decide on if you are a family, it could be either the adults or if you have children that are maybe teenagers or something. Because this is a skill that not everybody enjoys. I love it, but my wife, she's not so much into it. However, the psychological part of this is that both my wife and I look at our income and expenses at the end of every month. So we know exactly what's happening to our household. When we look at our supermarket, it's not about, well, you went to supermarket so many times and this is what you spend. It's like, no, as a whole family, this is how much we spend on the supermarket. If we go eat out, most of the time it's us together, but for those that work like in different places, sometimes one spouse may be outside the home more often, so they eat out a little bit more. And again, it's not about, well, how much he or she ate, as opposed to, well, this is what's happening to our whole. We need to treat our finances, our household finances as a unit and not individual. Okay. I see a lot of nods and all of it. Okay. All right. Our next lesson that we're going to go to is responsibility. All right. I'm going to put a question in the chat. And I know you have done this, but let's see what responsibilities or those that have children, or if you don't have any children as you were growing up, do you assign chores or responsibilities to your children, or did you have responsibilities around the house? So that's the question. You can unmute or you can put the answer in the chat.
Hi, Alex.
Yes.
I don't usually assign chores for my child. My daughter is 9 years old now.
Okay.
Because in Hong Kong, it's very common to have a helper at home.
Okay.
And then, so most of the chores, she is responsible for most of the chores already. So, but I started to think that my daughter has to be responsible for at least one or two parts, because I found that if she has some responsibility on that, maybe she is more disciplined on some parts of her life, because now sometimes it's quite messy. I think. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thoughts from other parents? I know we have several parents in the room. What are your thoughts about giving responsibility to your child or children? Kaisa, I know you have 2 kids.
So my kids are almost 3 and 5 years old. So I think I started with a small responsibility, like when they eat, they put their dirty dishes back into the sink, or they clean up if they make a mess, or they make their bed when they wake up, especially my 5 years old. They still need a lot of help, but I think the earlier we start on, we are, better off long term.
Okay, all right, very good. I'm glad to hear that. Maria says, my parents assign task chores to us. Okay, that's very good. Deepak says, yes, I think he's agreeing. Sayor says, my parents assign chores for me to do the growing up. Okay, all right. So glad to see that, because this is one of actually my favorite lessons when we do this in classrooms. I always love finding one student who does not do anything. And it's guaranteed that we always have at least one. And we make an example. So this chores, I mean, whatever you do, washing dishes, cleaning room, there are a lot of stuff in here. Let me read a couple. Asa says, I teach at a Montessori school, and it's all about independent care of self and the environment for each child. Okay, very good. This term, this last term that we just finished, one of the teachers, and it's a third grade teacher, she actually has application for duties around the classroom. And she told me that the first week or so after school, she has a listing of all the chores that students need to do a lot around the classroom. Like somebody needs to be responsible for sometimes when there's a phone call. There are just very small, simple tasks, turning off the light if they're watching a video, passing out papers, do a lot of stuff. So she kind of makes it like they're applying for a job, which I thought it was very interesting and brilliant. So she says, that's how I get the kids engaged. Let me read a couple of messages here. Vicky says, I have a child of 10 years, but every day he wakes up and knows that he is supposed to dress up his bed and sweep the compound. Perfect. Molopi says, all my kids, 2 sons, all share the family chores in the house, like cleaning, cooking, gardening, doing shopping, etc. But they are all grown up and running their own families a responsibility too. Now I am left with my wife alone. Okay. So responsibility is actually responsibility and accountability are basis of our borrowing system. And that's part of the reason that we've included these 2 character traits in our financial program. Again, we here in US, as we will see later on, we have to utilize the credit system, the credit card and the credit system, because a lot of things that we do here, we are required to have credit, which shows that we are a responsible person or not. Starting from if you want to get a new mobile phone plan, not the mobile phone itself, but if you want to get a monthly plan, they want to make sure that we're responsible. When we want to rent an apartment, the landlord looks at our financial responsibility and accountability because they want to make sure that if they rent a place to me, I am going to be paying them every month. Something that's very difficult here, if a tenant does not pay, especially in our state, in California, if a tenant does not pay, it will take the landlord 3 to 6 months to evict that tenant. So that's why they want to make sure that tenants that are coming in are responsible. Insurance companies for automobile. I have a friend who said actually a month ago, his insurance went up because his financial responsibility went down a little bit. We'll talk about how they can see this financial responsibility, I think next week. But it's very important for us to not only become responsible ourselves, but also raise children that are responsible too. So some parents have chores, sheets like on the refrigerator, on the wall or something. I'm not going to go too detailed into that. Often our responsibilities we don't understand. So I need a parent volunteer whose children have been begging them to have a pet, a dog, a cat, or something like that. Has anybody ever had that challenge where the children are begging the parents to have a dog or a cat or maybe a hamster? Anything?
So your question is, can I also your question is if my child has asked me for a pet or something?
Yes. Yep.
She didn't really beg for pets because in my parents' home there are 2 dogs.
Okay.
So every week, basically, we visited quite often. Every week, once a week, we visited the pets at my parents' home. So she's okay with it. Yeah, and then in Hong Kong, the houses and the place that we live is usually not very big. It's a very rare resources in Hong Kong. The places are very small, and that's why I didn't have a pet. But I think if we have a different environment or a bigger house, then we may consider doing that.
Okay. All right. So this is what we normally see from our children, because our children, they want a pet. So they would ask, can we have a pet? And they get very excited about it. But then once they get the pet, who ends up doing all the things that, so let's say for a dog, this is what children don't understand, that when you get a dog, you have to walk it, you have to feed it, you have to play with it, clean it, take it to the doctor. So these are all the things that as children, they want something, but they don't necessarily understand the responsibility. Asa says, yes, it happened with me and my dog, and my parents ended up taking care of her. Okay, all right, so that's a perfect example. Now, can you guys think of a situation in our financial world that we want something bigger, better, but we don't quite understand the responsibilities that come with it? In our financial world, something that we want, and there are several different examples, either as a young person, young adult, or even as we're growing older. Are there things that you can think about that we want, that we see it, but then it requires care, it requires maintenance? Obviously not a cell phone, because cell phone is, you just buy it and you use it. But there are things that require regular maintenance. Can everybody think of a few examples? So I will put something in there. So one of the ones that I really like to look at is renting versus owning. So when we are renting, let's say an apartment, it's fairly simple. We pay the rent, and usually the landlord is responsible for all the maintenance. Anything that breaks down, we call the landlord. At least this is how it is in US. The landlord has to, by law, they have to come in and fix it, whether it's the toilet, whether it's the fan, the light, anything. If it's something, if pipe is leaking, they have to do that. But then when we own a house, we are the landlord. We have to take care of everything. And those are some of the responsibilities that we don't necessarily understand. When we are young, here in US, youth can start to drive from the age 16. And often they want a car, they want a vehicle. But what they don't understand, the car needs maintenance. It needs tires, it needs gas or petroleum, it needs insurance. Here in US, there is a lot of youth, like as soon as they graduate from high school, they want to have their own independence. They want to go live on their own. We just did that with one of our friends who was very much, he said, I don't want to live with my parents. I want to go on my own. And I asked him, have you looked at to see how much it will cost you? And he said, yeah, it should cost about maybe $1,500 per month. And once we sat down and did all of the expenses that he might have living by himself with maybe a few roommates, he ended up needing about $2,500, so $1,000 more than what he thought. This is why it's so important to have a general idea of what's happening with our responsibilities and so now, the next segment into this is about, so these are responsibilities that we have for ourselves in our household, in our, maybe in our school if you're a child, and we do all of this with children, and they love it. It's like they can totally relate to this, because I know Carol last week was asking, how do we teach this to children? This is not something that's just for adults. It's very much easy to do this table with children, and they are quite understand. Even this one activity. So our question is, should we feel responsible? I'm going to put it in the chat. Should we feel responsible for others? Especially people that we don't know, not our family members, but people around us, our community around us. Should we feel responsible for that? Any thoughts? I know some of you had very great things in your comments for this exercise. But I want to see if there are any anybody would like to share that. And I actually got permission from one of our friends from Jerry, who's doing the program as a self-study. He has a lot of great things in his sheet. So any thoughts whether we should, or should we just think about ourselves? As long as we think about our life necessities, we have our shelter, we have our food, we have our clothing, we think about our own investment, we think about our own future, we're good to go. All right, so I see that few friends saying that, yes, we definitely have to. So the idea behind this exercise is to remember, we're trying to get to a point where we don't have to work for money. When that's going to happen, it depends, it really varies. Some people get it done sooner, some people get it done later. But the goal is for us to be able to make a difference in our society, in the world. So I'm going to pull up Jerry, because I did ask him for permission and he said yes. Had a lot of great stuff in here. Yeah, Jerry is from Johannesburg in South Africa. So these are some of the comments that he put in there, some of the challenges that he's seeing in his community. A lot of challenges. And he wants to write a letter to complain to the sectional title as stipulated by law. Let's see, increasing bond interest. I don't think increasing bond interest rate and the banks refuses to negotiate in good terms. Well, that sounds like a personal thing. I don't know how it's done in South Africa, but here we can negotiate a little bit with banks in US, especially on interest rate that they're charging on credit cards. So if anybody has credit card debt, it is something that can be negotiated here in US. Not much, but it can be. But interest rate on like savings account, it's very difficult to negotiate that. So let's go into our breakout session. And the topic is going to be what challenges you're seeing in your community and what solution have you come up with? And this should not be anything big, something simple. Because if you start something big, we may not be able to get to it. But something simple. And I know that reviewing everyone's worksheet, there were a lot of great topics that you guys had shared in your worksheet. I'm going to stop sharing. And let me recreate the breakout room. All right, and Kaisa, you take the lead with your group. You're in room 2, and I will see who's there. Okay. All right. So we'll take 10 minutes, and we'll come back after 10 minutes. The topic is to talk about what challenges are you seeing in your community, and what are some of your thoughts on how to address them. So please join your breakout. All right. Anybody wants to start? Something you wrote in your worksheet or something else you would like to share as far as what challenges you're seeing in the immediate community you're living in? Ezra, you're unmuted. I'm sure you have something there. Any thoughts from the group? I know our friends from Cambodia, they cannot unmute themselves because I think there's someone that's still the. Sophia, go ahead.
I'm not clear. I'm not sure if I don't understand your question well. But if is it relating to the challenge that I found in my community, right?
Yes, yeah. So challenges that are in your community, in your surrounding, that you think you can do something to improve it by yourself or with other people?
The main challenge for my community, I think it's spread in the whole country, is the debt of the poor family.
Okay.
Because they do not have the financial knowledge. Then they are now accessing to the money shark, who, you know, like they have to pay something like 20% of interest per month. That is a very big challenge, and I am interested on this point, and I want to do something about that. I think it's very important to educate the people about financial education. If the people have the financial knowledge, then they know about the budget and they know why they have to access the loan, and they have to source the source of lending better than now. Now they just only borrowing from one lender to pay for other lenders.
Okay. All right. That's a very big challenge. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
And I really like your solution because that's something that hopefully with this program you can do. Just bring it to children, to youth, adults. Yeah, hopefully you can do that. Okay.
Because the goal that I'm attending the course is to get the knowledge, the knowledge of the curriculum in order to transfer to those and also the children especially.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Anybody else would like to share thoughts?
Well, for me, the challenge that I see is one, we have disposal of discarded material like plastic. It is really something that we need to think about as individuals and then work together with others to try to address it. The other is education, basic education, to help individuals extend basic literacy to enable individuals be able to communicate and try to look at challenges in a more informed way. Then the other is basic health care, how to encourage each other to have checkups and also to try to administer the correct medication after that kind of understanding.
Okay. So, Tiza, what is your personal plan? So you listed a lot of problems and things. And what is your personal plan? Because that's what it really counts. Personal starting an initiative or something. What have you started on addressing any of these?
Yes, basically, I have been having small groups of study that look at some of the problems around us. So I invite friends like 5 to 10, and we talk together about these issues and what really needs to be done. So that's the step I've taken in the line of education.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Vicky, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Alex. From my end, I live in northern part of Uganda. So there is a big challenge of environmental degradation, whereby most of the people are making it like a massive cutting down of trees, whereby it is really affecting our environment. And if you look in that regard of cultivation, the outputs are not now coming in big returns as it is expected. So one of the things that I have been doing to meet this challenge, I have been sensitizing communities on the dangers of cutting down these trees, and then educating them like to do more reforestation instead of making massive cutting down of trees. And then also there are these small community-based organizations that they are so much attached to these communities. They have community groups. So I go so direct to them and try to like use them to sensitize the community more. Thank you so much.
Well, very good. Don't go yet. So these are all great initiatives. But what are your thoughts? I mean, Kiza, Vicky, Sophia, you guys are just, I mean, Sophia has a team there with him. But are we making a difference? I mean, does it really matter if you or me as an individual try to take some of these initiatives, or shouldn't we just wait for the government to try to, or other people to try to fix it?
Not necessarily that. Of recent, we have just gone to the offices for the National Forest Authority to like empower these small groups, because some of them, they may not even be having that knowledge of knowing that I have to like preserve my environment. So it is now the National Forest Authority that is empowering them by distributing seedlings to those ones who are having piece of land for them to plant it up. Yeah, that is the far we have gone so far.
Okay, all right. Let me pose another question to the, unless if anybody else wants to share an initiative that they're working on before I pose the next question. I want to make sure everybody has a chance. I don't see any microphones going off. Now, the next question is that these challenges that you guys mentioned, which we have them in the US, to believe it or not, we have illiterate people here in US, even children. We have a lot of people that rely, what Sophia was talking about. We have a lot of people that unfortunately rely, we call them payday loans. Exact same concept that he mentioned. People have to, they go and give their check before they receive it. They don't give the access, but they promise their payment from their employer to somebody or the officer, and they borrow a loan in advance. And some of them charge up to like 40% upfront, which is crazy. But my question is are these problems, are we adults going to solve these problems? Is it just our problem? What role do our youth and children play in these endeavors? Or are they too young to be thinking about these? What are your thoughts? Nobody wants to add something?
Beg your pardon, Alex.
Go ahead, Giza.
I beg your pardon to your question.
So the question is that these challenges that we mentioned, the environment, the plastic bags, the debt, and all of that, is it just us adults that have to fix it, or do our children and youth play a role in it?
Well, I think everyone has a role to play, be it adults or children. We need to create the awareness that cuts across all the age groups in order to make a contribution.
Okay. All right, very good. Sophia, you want to say something?
I agree that everyone must take responsibility to that. For example, the children and the youth, first they have the responsibility to take the knowledge of the financial knowledge, and then when they have a knowledge of financial, then they can use that knowledge to transfer to their parents or their families.
Okay. All right. Yes, very good. If you haven't worked with children and youth, especially children, I mean, I love when we go into the primary schools. They are young, they're not polluted, not too much yet, as opposed to like once they get to grade like 6 and 7 and above, which they think that they know everything. So it's much easier to work with children, and as Sophia mentioned, we've seen children actually go and educate their parents. So, all right, let's leave, and then we'll regroup in the main session. See you guys there.
Yeah, see you. Bye.
Okay. Everybody back? Yep. Okay, Penny, so what did you guys talk about?
Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, so our group did discussed about some of the good points. For example, Parisa mentioned about she has a thought of knowing the neighbors a little bit more because she thought that they didn't really talk to each other very often and they don't really know each other well. So I think she thinks it's a good idea to have a soft gathering with a neighbor, invite them to her home, and then try to make friends with them and to have like better relationships so that they can have you know, they take care of each other or they talk more in the future with each other. And then Molopi also shared that there is a problem in the neighborhood about garbage, a lot of garbage problem. And then he thinks the solution is to form a committee to look out for the garbage and then try to do a neighborhood wash to clear all the garbage and stuff like that. Maria also has some thoughts about school teachers because she thought that the school teachers feeling burnout and ready for summer already. And then she suggests to bring treats to school and offer compliments to co-teachers. And I also have I think it's about a study for my child at school. Because of the pandemic over the past few years, she didn't actually go to school very often. And so what I mean is she usually attend only online sessions, like Zoom classes and stuff like that, and it's only half day. And because previously when there is no pandemic issues, and they went classes for the full day. So it's pretty hard for her to catch up with the progress of the studying. So what I suggest is the solution is that because I participated in the Parent Teachers Association at the moment and as one of the members, so I think I can suggest or talk to the teachers and see what could be done to try to see what we can do to make sure that they can catch up with the progress of the studying and not so tough for them. I think that's pretty much what we discussed.
Very good. Thank you so much. Sophia or Kiva, do you guys want to share what we talked about? So I'm not the one who's talking. Kiva, you want to share what we talked about? Kiva, go ahead.
Well, yeah, some of the friends from our group also mentioned about disposal of discarded material like plastic. There are also issues of environmental degradation, where people are completely cutting down the trees, and they need to be assisted to really know the relevance of having these trees through empowerment. There are also issues of basic health to help the people access the knowledge about why they need to visit the hospital and get the correct medication. And then there is also a challenge of education, accessing basic education. So there is a number of issues that the friends identified. And then there are also the action steps that the friends have already embarked on to help overcome these challenges.
Yeah, very good. So yeah, one of the other ones that Sophia mentioned from Cambodia is that people are borrowing beyond their means before they get their money from work. something that it actually happens quite often here in the US as well. It happens in neighborhoods where people are not, they don't have the knowledge of how to manage their finances. Or like around our military bases. Our town in Southern California, San Diego, has several different military bases. And it's very unfortunate that these shops are in places where people don't have the necessary financial education. And what they do, let's say, if I'm expecting to get paid from my employer $1,000 in 1 week, I can go to this shop, tell them, yes, you can have my money when it comes, but I want the money sooner. And they charge anywhere from 10 to even 40%. So instead of giving me $1,000, they'll give me only $600, and they'll take $400 just for giving me the money like a week earlier. It's very sad, and we've been trying to address that, and I guess it also exists in Cambodia. Let's see. Kiza also mentioned about plastic, single-use plastic, which is a huge problem. We'll talk about it more in the coming weeks. Now, the question that I posed in the group was, are these, and we had a consultation about it, these challenges that we're talking about, are us only adults that will have to address it, or do our youth and children have some part in it too? So I know our group had some thoughts. I want to know what the other group thinks. Is it us adults that we have to fix these problems, or our children and youth have some parts in it too? Any thoughts?
I think children usually have very good ideas. They can come up with very good ideas that at least to start with, and we can help them to expand it and complete it. And I think it's important to start with the kids, because those are the future adults. So definitely we have to involve them.
Okay. That's a great thought. And I can see that Asa has already started to involve her youngest one. I see Dara popping up the screen from time to time. Your daughter, it was your daughter, Asa, right, who was on the screen? So, yeah. And it's amazing, even at that young age. I mean, I'm not saying that she is understanding anything we're saying, but the fact that we're involving our children, and it's amazing when we do this. Let me share my screen. Yeah. This one that we're doing now. So when we do this exercise, when we ask the students to write down challenges in their communities, you'll be surprised. Even we start at grade 3. You'll be surprised what they come up with. Some of the challenges they come up with, some of the ideas they come up with, it just blows our mind away. And often they want to, like, I'll give an example. Recently in a 4th grade classroom, they said that their school is dirty. There's a lot of trash. And we said, all right, it's only students who are using the school. Nobody from outside comes in there. So who is throwing rubbish in the yard? And is it like principal, teachers, staff, or the students? And they said, oh, it's the 5th graders. And we said, why? And the student and the 4th grader said, well, because it's their final year in the school. And since they are going to be going to another school the next year, they don't care. So they came up with the idea of beginning to talk to them. 2 ideas. One was that they would not be a typical 5th graders next year and just throw trash, but then also have, as part of the school, have an initiative to make sure that we always leave our environment clean and not dirty for the next generations, for the next grade level. So you'll be surprised how much even young people can participate in these endeavors, whatever we come up with. We just have to give them a chance. I think often we just think of our children and youth. It's like, well, let them play video games or mind their own business. But as we can see, these days, they're a lot more smarter than us, especially when it comes to technology. They can use our cell phones, tablets, and everything, computers, a lot better than us. I call myself old-time adult. So we just have to give them some room and give them a voice. Let them come in and present their ideas and accompany them. That's what we're gonna do. All right. I'm gonna ask one last question and then we'll review the rest of the assignments one next week. Do you think that these challenges, and there's a lot of them, do you think they can only be solved with material resources, such as money, maybe time, things, or is there something else that's needed? So the question is, let's say, for example, the environment. Vicky mentioned about trees being cut down in northern part of Uganda. Kiza mentioned about single-use plastic. Our environment, do you think we can just take care of these problems through material means and education, or do we need a higher power to fix these problems? Thoughts? Everyone is awfully quiet. I know we're getting to the end of our session.
I think that we need both material and spiritual solutions, because the spiritual approach makes us relate with our own selves in relation to the challenge that we are talking about. For example, when we talk about borrowing beyond our means, it has an element of spirituality in it, because we need to be honest with ourselves, need to have the trust, and we also need to be realistic. So as we come up with solutions for such kinds of challenges, we have to reflect on the material and the spiritual approaches.
Okay, very good. Asa, you're shaking your head. What do you have in mind?
No, I was just enjoying the comments, and I did share a quote. I don't know if that quote was included in some of the writings that you share, but I did write down a quote that came to mind. But definitely that yeah, like the spiritual awareness is the basis of all the sufferings and the issues humanity is experiencing. Like within ourselves, the first challenge is like our own selves, our own ego with our spiritual consciousness. And that's like the first thing we need to understand and overcome in order to go like to the next circle, which is our immediate family. And then like think about those challenges and the solutions. And then from there to the like our surrounding communities, whether it's the workspace or our neighborhood, and then yeah, they're not separate at all. Our inner being and our physical environment.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Yes, it is, and that's part of it. When we designed this program to begin with, it was not our intention to include spirituality in there, but somehow it evolved as that. I mean, from early time when we developed this ABCs of Well, it was based on character development. It was the very first workshop that we did. It was actually spiritual views on wealth and prosperity. That's what it was. But we never thought, when my wife, and when I say we, it's my wife and I, we never thought that the program will have such a strong spiritual foundation and there would be so much receptivity to it. And we'll be able to teach this in the public school. Now, of course, in the public schools, we don't read those scriptures. Not yet. I know maybe in like 10, 20 years, this would be allowed in schools, but at least not yet. But we're so excited that people do recognize the connection between our spirituality and material stuff, that it will become part of everyone's life. So that's what we have to do. All right, let me see. Okay. All right. So let's see what we need to do. Your assignments for this week. Let's review and then what we're going to be doing. So definitely continue to work on your budget. Start preparing if you need to like write down the different categories that you're buying. So you'll be prepared to put in the actual numbers in here. One offer that we have, because I see that most of our couples or families, only one spouse is here. If anybody needs to work with their spouse on their personal finances, we'd be more than happy to do that, especially for our friends here in San Diego. I'm hoping that we can all get together and have a session, live session together, or even one-on-one with your spouse, because we know that this is something new. I know Parisa mentioned it last week that it was new, and I'm sure Asa, this is new for you and Samin as well. We would love to get together, have a consultation and see how we make this happen. And hopefully you're not feeling overwhelmed. I mean, you could be overwhelmed, but it takes time. This budgeting process takes time. It's not a one-time thing, but it's really the fruit of this program that we're doing. One of the fruits is developing this budget. You also have to start looking at your different assets and liabilities. We will record them at the end of May, once May is over next week, once we are into June. So we have a base. We can even do it now. And remember, these are just examples. Same thing as categories. You can delete any of these. All of these boxes are open. So you can delete what doesn't pertain to you and then put in new numbers for May. Next week, as far as our lesson plans, we're going to continue. We're going to be talking about borrowing and credit, something that's very much needed here in the US, but I know it is also needed in other countries. So your other assignment is to complete the fill in these worksheets, the accountability. Yeah, responsibility and accountability are basis of our borrowing system. And the idea here is that we're trying to build a community together, wherever we are. So everything that you shared as far as challenges, think about those challenges and think about things that exist in your community and what does not exist. So for example, goal of our community could be that it progresses, it elevate our community. This could be like one of the goals of progress. Then for nutrition, you would write down what supermarkets are available. I'm just going to put some of the supermarkets that we know here in the US. Let's say there is Vons, Alfred. So the idea to see where we get our nutrients from, whether it's a market, sometimes we have farmers market, just kind of become aware of the resources that are available in our community, essentially. Is there enough housing? Where do we go to buy clothing items, our life necessities? Do we have access to physical health? Like there is hospitals, there is whatever is near in your area. Remember, you're only looking at your immediate area. Our mental health, how do we keep ourselves mentally? Do we go to library and read? I don't know if anybody else still goes to library and read since we have our phones. Our emotional health, how do we keep our emotions into check? Do we have a support group? Do we have family members? We know that a lot of especially families, especially with young children, we went through it. Our boys, if you remember, they're grown, they're 21 and 22. But I remember when our first one was born and the second one, my wife used to tell me that she used to complain that her only communication is with a 2-year-old because she was spending all of her time with our older son. So those emotions, we need support. We need to help each other. Houses of worship, where do we go to worship? Whether it's church, mosque, temple, our education system. So you kind of get the feeling of what you're trying to do in here. And then think about some of the things that, especially we wrote in responsibility. What is it that we can do? Let's take it a little step further. Is it something that's missing? Often in the school, the kids say like a skate park, somewhere where they can go skate, or like a community center. Whatever that is, whatever you think you can come up with for your immediate neighborhood. And then think about what resources are needed to, for example, create that skate park or the community center. What financial needs are needed, what human resources are needed. And then once we get into the borrowing, we want to see Because our idea of borrowing should be for making advancement. I'll give an example. Higher education. So if you remember, here in US, universities, most universities cost. They're not free. So a lot of people end up borrowing money. Collateral is something that we have to put in order to borrow money. For education, there's really none. But let's say it could be our house. If we have a primary residence, we could use that as a collateral to borrow money. And then compensation is usually interest. This could be like starting a business. If you have a business idea that you want to start, how would you go about it? And let me see, what else do we have for next week? Oh, and then we have, we're going to be learning about how to become, whether we are a thankful and respectful society or not. So in the thankful lesson, we're going to write down some of the things we're thankful for. Family, friends, God, whatever we want. And then decide which ones we must have and which ones we can live without. So obviously food and water is an absolute must have. We will die without it. Friends and family, it kind of goes in between. So just becoming thankful, realizing the blessings that are around us. So that's the other lesson plan. So
recording in progress.
So these are the, so you're going to be, you're going to do accountability, thankfulness. We'll also get into respect too, but go through the assignment for that later. All right, I'm going to stop here. We got 3 minutes left. I'm hoping that we're setting a good example of punctuality, starting on time and ending on time. I know this punctuality is not a strong character trait for most cultures, but we're really hoping that people take notice of it. All right, questions, comments about what we covered today? Assignment? Are we all good? Okay, well, again, thank you so much, everyone, for sacrificing your time. I know this is not necessarily easy, especially when it's a free program. But really appreciate everyone logging in, different time zones. And we'll stay in touch through the group chat, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you. I'm sorry, can you mention again on the shelter? What is the shelter referring to?
The shelter is for housing. Like, is there enough people have housing, affordable housing, things like that.
Thank you.
Okay. All righty then. See you guys later. Bye.
Bye. Thank everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.